This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Real Talkers, it wasn't too long ago that Alberta Federation of Labor President Gil McGowan was in this very studio launching his campaign for the leadership of the Alberta NDP. Real Talk was the first show that he came to announce. He was with us before his news conference. You may remember, well, kind of a bookend type scenario as Gil joins us on this episode of Real Talk immediately after announcing that he's withdrawing from the race. We're going to find out why, not only the reasons that prompted him to wrap up this leadership bid, but maybe some of the observations that he made, what he makes of the growth of the party, announcing its membership numbers for the first time this week. There's been speculation. People have been wondering, is it 30,000? Is it 100,000? Well, now we know that the Alberta NDP says there's about 85,000 members. Of course, all the leadership candidates are claiming now how many they've sold, how many of those they're responsible for. We won't know until mid-June when they vote. As a matter of fact, on summer solstice, that vote will go down on the 21st of June. We'll know by the third week of June who will be the next leader of Alberta's opposition and ultimately who will be fighting to be Alberta's next premier. We know it won't be Gil McGowan. We'll find out why in just a second. Plus, World Press Freedom Day passed us by a few days ago, and a photojournalist, a good friend of this show. As a matter of fact, she's an international award-winning photojournalist, Amber Bracken, put out a thread on Twitter, on X, talking about press freedom. And it caught our attention. We're intrigued by what she has to say. Her take on it, Canadians are taking press freedom for granted. Now, you may be one of those that's rolling your eyes right now. Oh, this is a talk show host talking to a journalist about how important their profession is to the rest of us. That's not where we're going with this. There's relevance to you, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter where you live. We're going to get into that. Plus, we're going to talk to Amber about her incredible new photo essay, Run for the Children, in the newest episode, or the newest edition, rather, the newest issue of Alberta Views magazine. That's the May 2024 issue of Alberta Views magazine. That's coming up in this episode of Real Talk, which is made possible by Alberta's best real estate school. Alberta's top real estate school is Relo. That's R-E-L-O. You can find them online at relo.ca. That's where better real estate training starts. This is a shout out to those of you that are sick of the cubicle life. You're sick of working for somebody that doesn't appreciate your contributions, and you're sick of the fact that your income's capped. There's no opportunity to work harder, work longer, earn more. If those are the things you're looking for, real estate could be a perfect fit for you. And if that's the case, you're going to want to get going at Relo. They've got a team of online instructors ready to help you out. They've got supports all the way through. You're studying for your exam, getting licensed, and then, of course, starting your own business. Invest in success with Relo. And because you're hearing about this or seeing it on Real Talk, there's an exclusive offer that's going to save you up to a couple $100. The promo code Ryan100 will knock $100 off the Alberta Residential Real Estate Bundle and the Alberta Commercial Real Estate Bundle. That's the promo code Ryan100 at Relo.ca. Well, he's certainly a familiar name in Alberta politics, longtime labor leader, the president of the Alberta Federation of Labor, and up until a number of hours ago, a candidate for the leadership of the Alberta NDP. But Gil McGowan has announced he's withdrawing from the race, and we're grateful that you've made time to talk to us in the studio today. Welcome back to Real Talk.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, come nice and close to the mic. Everybody wants to hear what you have to say. Was this sort of a decision? I know you last time you were here, your eyes were wide, and you were enthusiastic, and you were painting your vision for the province, and you were talking about how Alberta needs its next Peter Naheed, and here we are a few weeks later. You're out of the race, so take us through kind of the mile markers of that decision.
Well, there's an old saying that there are three things that matter in politics: money, money, and money.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I didn't have enough money. For those who don't know, the party had set an entry fee for all candidates.
$60,000, right?
$60,000 payable in 3 installments. So I raised enough money through my volunteers and supporters to, clear the first 2 hurdles. And we did actually have enough money to basically make it over the third hurdle, but we wouldn't have had any more money to spend in the final 5 or 6 weeks. So, and I have, every campaign costs money. I had 3 staff people, not a big staff, and we had debts. So we had to make a tough decision, and we pushed it to the last minute on Sunday night. The deadline was midnight, and around 10 p.m. we just decided that we couldn't make it. And because there's nothing worse than finishing a political campaign with a debt, and we were facing the prospect of a debt of in the order of $13,000, $14,000, $15,000, and it's hard to raise money when you're campaigning. Just imagine how hard it is to raise money after the campaign
when you've already pulled out.
Yeah. So honestly, it was purely about money, and I wish that we had enough. But some campaigns catch fire, some don't, and sometimes they don't. And unfortunately, that's what happened with ours. I threw my hat into this ring because I thought there was a need. I thought we were bringing some big ideas to the table, but there were, we had hundreds of donors. But as you can imagine, I'm the president of the Federation of Labor. I'm a labor guy. My whole point in this campaign was to be a voice for working people, and so it probably comes as no surprise as that a lot of the people who are contributing to my campaign were working people themselves. And so the donations were in the order of, $10, $20, $50, the kind of thing that people could afford, but not the big checks, and so at the end of the day, it was about money. I do actually have some concerns that the Party of Workers set an entry fee so high. And so, I'm not sure that fits with the party we were or the party that we're supposed to be.
Yeah, what do you think would have been an appropriate entry fee? I mean, I think some people might say, well, you got to set it at a level that sends a message that the party is serious.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to make it $5,000 and have 55 candidates and,
exactly.
The debates are a big joke, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was basically triple the entry fee that was in place when Rachel Notley ran.
Is that right?
Later. Yeah.
Which would have been, can you remind me what year that would have been? 09 or 2010, something like that?
Yeah.
Or no, she won the leadership right before she won the, didn't
that's
she?
Right.
She
so
was
she'd been
the leader for like 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, it was like
or something.
2013, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I should know that off the top of my head. But
so it's about a decade
So
ago.
what does that say to you about, if anything, I don't want to read too much into it. You're the guest, not me.
Yeah.
Does it say something to you about the direction the party's going?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if they put enough thought in it. I think, to be honest, I think they understood that the race was going to attract a lot of attention. They wanted to put on a big show, and when you put on a big show, it costs money, and so they wanted to raise enough money from the candidates to help fund, things like the big debate. So like last Saturday in Calgary, we had a debate that attracted 1,000 people in a big hall at the BMO Center. That doesn't come cheap. And so, they wanted to raise enough money from the candidates to help pay for the big show. I get that. And I also get your point that if you're serious, you should be able to raise a certain amount of money. But, there's a happy medium there, especially for a party that's supposed to represent the little guy. If you set the entry fee so high, then you're only going to get the high rollers. And that's a problem for a party like the New Democrats that is not supposed to be a party of high rollers.
By the way, Rachel Notley reelected in the 2012 Alberta provincial election and then winning the leadership of Alberta's NDP on October 18th of 2014. Okay. And then, of course, it was in May, early May, when the Orange Crush happened. So she'd been leader for 7 months or so. What surprised you about the dynamic of the leadership race? What maybe surprised you about maybe some of the surges in popularity, perceived or otherwise, that you've seen from other candidates? What maybe surprised you about your own campaign?
Well, I mean, the big thing that everyone's talking about now is the number 85,000, which you mentioned off the top, and I think that's a testament to the strong campaigns that have been run by all the candidates. And also it's a testament to the desire among thousands and thousands of Albertans to look for a viable alternative to the UCP. However, my enthusiasm for that number comes with an asterisk, and that asterisk is that I'm not sure that the thousands of people who joined the party are representative of the voters that we actually need to reach. In fact, I would, just because they are new to the party doesn't mean that they didn't vote for us last time. And that sort of brings me back to one of the main points that I've been making in this leadership race right from the beginning, and that has to do with working people. Ironically, the Alberta NDP has a working people problem. Specifically, the polls tell us that working people are not voting for the traditional Working People's Party, and that's I'm kind of a data guy when it comes to politics, and one of the big reasons I decided to throw my hat into the ring was that the data was telling me a troubling story. And so, as you can imagine, as president of the Federation of Labor, we do a lot of polling on a regular basis and pretty much on a quarterly basis. And what that polling has told us, both before and after the last provincial election, is that the New Democrats do really, really well among people who identify as middle class and who have university educations, especially in the two big cities, Calgary and Edmonton. But they're losing to the UCP among Albertans who identify as working class and who have high school, college, and trades education. And that's not an insignificant number. So here in Alberta, it's about 35% of Albertans of voting age have university education. But 60% are in that other category that I just mentioned, people with high school, college, or trades education. So that's the biggest chunk of the population, and they are working people, traditional blue-collar people, people who identify as working class, and they are disproportionately voting for the UCP. And that's a gut punch for me as a worker advocate.
So why do you think that is? Is part of that? Because, I mean, here's kind of how I look at this, and this feels like, what is it, like grade 4 science where they do the water cycle and you sort of see like how it all goes. And so is this like the Conservative provincial government rails against the federal Liberals for their job-killing, oil and gas-killing policies, and then the feds, the Conservative opposition, and the Conservative government, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I don't think it is. I think it's like A to B to C. They both talk about the Notley-Singh alliance, the Singh-Trudeau alliance, the Trudeau-Notley alliance, all this kind of stuff. And then the working class or the workers, the working people of Alberta that you're talking about, you're saying the NDP's traditional base, is starting to understand this as though the federal Liberals and the federal NDP, vis-a-vis the provincial NDP, are all coming for our jobs, and we can't stand to lose our good jobs in oil and gas because of all these hippies talking about renewables, and so we've got to fight everybody on the progressive front, and the people fighting those folks are the Conservatives, and we're moving our vote over to the Conservatives. Is that it? Is this just effective politicking, looping the federal Liberals and all the NDP together, and here's the end result?
Well, I think you've done a good job of summarizing the Conservative narrative.
But it seems to be working, you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, from my perspective, there are three reasons why working people in Alberta are not flocking to the New Democrats. And if we want to change that and bring them back to the party of workers, we have to address those three issues. The first, and I'm going to be blunt about this, they're not voting for the NDP because they think we suck at the economy. That's number one. Number two, they're not voting for the NDP because they're not seeing solutions from the New Democrats to their big concerns, especially related to things like jobs and affordability. Instead, they just hear us criticizing the UCP but not offering solutions. And then finally, and this is the touchiest one, but in some ways I actually think it's the most important, working people are not voting for the NDP because they don't feel comfortable in the party, they don't feel welcome, and they don't see themselves reflected. And actually, this brings me to a point that I made in the debate in Calgary on Saturday. So it was the second debate in the leadership series. And right from the beginning, it's been almost exactly 7 weeks now since I launched my campaign, and I've been, shouting from the rooftops that in order to win in the next election, we have to attract workers back to the NDP, away from the UCP. I've described working people in Alberta as the missing piece in the coalition that the NDP needs to build in order to defeat the UCP. And so at that debate in Calgary, I in my opening remarks, I asked the audience to participate in an exercise with me. And I asked everyone with a university education to stand up. And there were about 1,000
That's
people in that hall.
business, buddy.
It is risky business, but I was quite confident what the result would be. And that, in fact, I was actually surprised how right I was. So when I asked this crowd of 1,000 people, all gathered to hear the candidates debate in the NDP leadership, I asked everyone with a university education to stand up. About 95% of the 1,000 people in the hall stood up.
Okay.
And, that's a strength, right? So like the New Democrats are really strong among university educated people, especially in the big cities, but it's also a weakness because 60% of the population have high school, college, or trades education, right? So they were not in that room. And if the New Democrats want to win, they have to build the tent. All the candidates agree on that point. But in order to build a tent, you have to understand who's outside the tent. And what I'm afraid of is that what we're doing is a really good job of attracting people who look like ourselves. So university educated people in the two big cities. But if we continue to be a party that is exclusively university educated Albertans from the big cities, we are going to lose. Even if we win every single seat in the two big cities, because of this advantage that we have among university educated Albertans, it's not enough. We have 87 ridings in this province, and the majority of them are outside of Edmonton and Calgary. That it's a close thing because the population of Alberta is concentrated in the two big cities, but it's not quite enough. And not only is it not quite enough electorally, I don't think. A party that was founded, and people have to understand the history. The NDP was founded as a historic partnership between the old CCF, representing farmers on one hand, and the Canadian Labour Congress, representing workers. But right now, we're not doing nearly well enough among working people, and we're not doing nearly well enough among people outside of the two big cities.
But with respect to the folks that in good faith poured their heart into volunteering and running for and donating to the party and knocking on doors for those years and years and years, the party was but a blip on the radar and on Alberta's political landscape. So you can talk about like the roots of the party. And I don't have a horse in this race, so we're just kind of shooting the shit here. But I think like when a party goes from like 4 to 54 in 2015, it's because something happened. And then now the party gets a taste of governance. The party gets a taste of like putting policy into action. It's not all theory. It's not all announcements. It's not all opposition. And so now they're going, how do we get back to there? And respectfully, they probably go right now looking at the polling and who's leading, perceived or otherwise in the polls. And they've got those kind of big three, Ganley, Hoffman, Nenshi. And I want to ask you about Nenshi in a second. Now they're probably going, well, we can't return to the roots that had us wandering in the desert for all those years.
Yeah, well, the New Democrats have only formed provincial government once in the election of 2015. And we went from 4 seats to 51. And I'll just point out that...
Isn't it 54? Anyway,
Well, we formed a majority government. And I'll just remind people that the campaign that the New Democrats ran in 2015 was actually quite a progressive one, focusing on a lot of labor issues. The big issue was introducing a $15 an hour minimum wage. The other thing that has not been talked about that much is that the labor movement played a huge role, a disproportionate role in that campaign. So, for example, as I mentioned, the party only had 4 seats. They didn't have a whole lot of money. Who do you think did the polling? Who do you think did the message testing? Who do you think helped develop that platform? It was us in the labor movement. I mean, and I'll be blunt. I don't think I've ever said this in a formal setting, but at that time there weren't the same kind of restrictions on election spending. So big corporations could pile money into the PCs, and we in the labor movement could spend money on supporting our party, the New Democrats. So it was the Alberta Federation of Labor and our affiliate unions that did the polling, that did the messaging. The party didn't have the money. We actually raised about $2 million. We hired 250 door knockers. We knocked on 750,000 doors in that campaign, and that. So like when people say that the NDP's association with the labor movement is somehow a liability, that's just completely at odds with the facts, right? And so I actually think that drifting away from the labor movement over the years has actually been a problem, not a solution.
Justin in the chat says, thanks, Gil, for running, for keeping labor in the conversation. I got a lot of respect for Gil, knowing that he had an uphill battle. Hey, take us into this story. It was kind of like a story, but a non-story. I know some of the campaigns thought it would probably be a bigger story. Alberta NDP leadership candidates, including Kathleen Ganley, Sarah Hoffman, I'm sure you, accusing Naheed Nenshi of anti-union statements. This was when he was Calgary's mayor. He basically asked a Conservative minister, right, a provincial minister, to intervene in or cancel or override a collective agreement, right? And based on some of the text that we were getting, which is, the 2024 version of the little brown envelopes, the text messages we're getting from some on other campaigns going, this is a bombshell. Brace yourself for a bombshell. And nobody cared. Honestly, nobody cared. Some people cared, but this was not a story. This didn't even make it through a 24-hour news cycle. What did that say to you about this leadership race in the state of the party?
Yeah, well, let me make it clear. That letter, which was signed by Naheed Nenshi when he was mayor of Calgary in 2019, it was a letter from Naheed as mayor to Jason Copping, who was the UCP labor minister at that time. And in the letter, on behalf of what at the time was a more conservative city council in Calgary, Naheed asked the UCP to intervene and give the city of Calgary the ability to abrogate an existing collective agreement with thousands and thousands of city workers. They were in line for a 1.5% wage increase at that time, and they wanted to basically tear up the contract and impose a zero. They also wanted to sidestep some other important labor rights that are guaranteed in the labor code. And so when people said it was a bombshell letter, especially considering that now, 5 years later, he's running to be the leader of what is supposed to be the Workers' Party. He basically went to the UCP, the UCP.
The government of the day.
The government of the day,
You know.
right? But he basically asked for the ability to tear up an existing collective agreement. So, that's really troubling from a guy who wants to lead the Party of Labor, right? And but to your point, it didn't cause as much of a ripple.
It was kind of like one of those bombs that falls from like a World War II bomber and then just like lands in the farmer's field but doesn't explode. And then somebody riding their horse 45 years later finds it, and they call in the bomb squad. It's just sitting there. It has explosive potential, but for some reason it doesn't detonate. And he kind of seemed to skillfully kind of brushed it aside. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. This isn't his, but he basically said, like, that was me doing a mayor's job. I had to do the job. I had to do the thing. I wrote the letter thinking it wouldn't actually even work anyway, and here we are.
Yeah, and what he basically said that he was playing 3D chess, and that he didn't really want to tear up the agreement, but he was throwing a bone to the right wing on the council by writing the letter, and that and the result was that the contract was not torn up, the workers' rights were not taken away, and maybe he had a strategy. The thing that I found frustrating is because I phoned all the unions involved, and I said, did you know about this strategy of Naheed's? Did you know about the 3D game of chess that he was playing? And they said no, he never shared that with us. So he was sort of freelancing. He was on his own, and I said to him afterwards, two things. First, it's a little bit of a dangerous game when you ask the UCP to tear up worker rights, and he said he was confident that they wouldn't, but they had the labor code open at that time, and they were watering it down and taking us back 20 or 30 years. They could very easily have done what he asked them to do in that letter. And so that was a dangerous game. He acknowledged to me that was a dangerous game. But also, if he was doing this on behalf of the city of Calgary employees, why didn't he tell them that? Why didn't he, bring them in on the game?
Well, that's not 3D chess. You can't tell everybody the move you're about to make. Loose lips, sink ships, and all that jazz. But and here's the other obvious point: is that at that time, Mayor Nenshi had absolutely nothing to do with the provincial NDP. Right? I mean, that's kind of been one of the objections against his campaign, or maybe one of the hesitations, I would say, is that his campaign colors now are his trademark purple and orange. But he is the outsider. I mean, that's the whole thing. So if I'm one of his campaign campaign strategists. You can't sort of poo-poo the party you're looking to lead, but at the same time, he it's not like he was, the NDP leader at the time. That would be ridiculous, right?
Right.
So yeah, but it's kind of interesting how it's all landed for the audience benefit. So the Alberta NDP announcing these numbers, releasing these numbers just hours before Gil and I are talking here. Gil McGowan with us. If you're just tuning in, live streaming the audio on the Mixler audio app presented by California Closets. 85,000 members of the party. The Nenshi camp is claiming around 50,000 of those, by the way. I don't know if they've said that publicly, but that's the number that they're claiming internally. 50 of the 85,000. As a reference or a point of comparison, the most recent UCP leadership race where Danielle Smith won, they had sold 123,000, or they were sitting at 123,000 members. So 85, 123, same ballpark, but kind of not at the same time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Does 85 sound like, are you encouraged? Is the number higher, lower than you thought?
The number is about where I expected it would be. There is a lot of excitement about the leadership.
It's pretty decent. It's higher than I thought.
Yeah, and there's absolutely no doubt that there are thousands and thousands of Albertans who want to see Danielle Smith become an ex-premier, right? I mean, whether it's her attacks on healthcare, her attacks on education, the restrictions that she's put on investment in renewable energy. There's very few things that Danielle Smith and her government are doing right now that they got a mandate for in the last election. In fact, there are a lot of things that she's doing that she promised explicitly not to do in the election. And I think most Albertans agree that we're on the wrong track. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people join the party. I think it's encouraging. I do think it's a reminder that Alberta is no longer a one-party state. We actually now have a functioning, viable two-party democracy. That's one of Rachel Notley's great accomplishments. And so, no, it doesn't surprise me that our party membership is now sort of in the same ballpark as the UCP. We're basically a 50-50 province now, and I think that's healthy for democracy. Having said that, though, I go back to my point about what I described as the missing piece in the coalition that the NDP needs to build in order to defeat the UCP, and that's working people. And what I'm concerned about is that even though the party is growing, a lot of those 85,000 people are not from that group that's outside the tent. So I think what we've done is we brought a lot of people into the tent as party members who did actually vote for us before. So it's not necessarily it's not been a great recruitment effort. You're saying, right? I mean, it's been a recruitment effort of people who were in our voting universe, and we've moved them from being in our voting universe, someone who had marked an X next to the NDP. We've moved them into that party. That's important. It is. Yeah. In terms of resources, in terms of boots on the ground, that's great. But I'm still not convinced that we're bringing people who actually weren't voting for us into the tent. Yeah, that's my concern.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, does it feel like does it feel to you like the party's been taken over by basically federal Liberal supporters?
The short answer is yes. Yes, it feels that way. It does. Yeah. And over the last 7 weeks, as you can imagine, I've been driving all around the province, and I was at an event in a small town called Nanton, just out.
Love Nanton.
Love Nanton.
Great public golf course.
And one of the old guys came up to me after I'd spoken to shake my hand, and he said, "You're familiar with the Alberta trifecta, right?" And I said, "Oh, excuse me, what's the Alberta trifecta?" And he said, "No rats, no sales tax, and no Liberals." And I laughed like you, but there's some truth in that. We're not a province that traditionally has voted Liberals. The Liberals run candidates all the time here at the federal and provincial level. We haven't had a Liberal provincial government in this province since our very first provincial government in 1905.
Was that Rutherford? I should know the answer. I'm
I think it was. Yeah.
I shouldn't speculate.
But it's you remember the show Corner Gas when they would talk about people from the neighboring town and they'd spit. That's sort of. I don't know if that rings a bell for you.
It was Rutherford, by the way, but I didn't know this. Oh my gosh, how did I not know this? Prime Minister Wilfrid Laurier appointed Alexander Rutherford, a prominent Liberal and former Northwest Territory Assembly member, as interim premier in 1905. And then they organized the province's first election. There
and that was the last time we had a Liberal government. And so, what I'm afraid of, and I'll be really blunt about this. We are in the process of replacing the New Democrats, a social democratic party, with a party that looks a lot more like the Alberta Party, a party that is supported by a lot of federal liberals. And don't get me wrong, I mean, in order to win here in Alberta, we need to build a coalition. That coalition needs to include traditional New Democrats. It needs to include people who voted for the Alberta Party, people who voted for federal liberals, and it needs to include a pretty significant group of people who traditionally have voted conservative, maybe some old PCs. That's the coalition that we need to win. But if you look across the prairies where New Democrats win, it's whether it's Manitoba, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, we win when we're full-throated social democrats. And I think and actually last night when I had my sort of farewell Zoom for my supporters, and one of the things that I said is that the moment we're in is a social democratic moment, right? A lot of the big problems that we're facing as a society can only be addressed through collective action, whether it's climate change, pandemic, inequality. To deal with these big societal issues, we need to pull together as a community. And so we need collective action solutions, and it's social democratic parties that traditionally have offered collective action solutions. And like right now, one of the biggest issues that is affecting Albertans is the affordability crisis. And social democratic solutions are the way to go. And this is, like in my campaign, I talked about introducing public auto insurance to bring down the price of insurance. I talked about re-regulating
the
power.
Premier's talking about that too, though.
Yeah. But our party is, will Naheed?
Does that surprise you a little bit?
No, because she's a populist, and she populists read the wind. She's a right-wing populist, and I'm convinced that the only way that the New Democrats are going to win in the next election and beyond is to meet right-wing populism with progressive populism. And this is not radical stuff. Like a lot of the things that I was putting on the table, public auto insurance, public energy, industrial policy to pivot our economy towards new opportunities. This is not radical stuff. It's been employed successfully in neighboring provinces like British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. When I was here last time, I talked about how Peter Naheed used industrial policy to pivot us towards the oil sands and petrochemicals.
Your Naheed comments on this show were just downloads from heaven, man. That was amazing. And you know what? I think you might be interested to hear that some of my most conservative friends, and take this as a compliment, some of my most conservative friends were like, Gil's not nuts with what he's talking about. They kind of liked what you were onto there. Does that surprise you to hear that?
No, it doesn't. I'm going to say this carefully because I don't want to offend a lot of my friends
just
on the
speak
left.
freely,
okay,
Gil.
Yeah, I'm not a candidate anymore, so I'll speak
You can say
freely.
whatever the hell you want.
Okay, so one of the reasons that New Democrats lose here in Alberta and elsewhere is because a lot of people think that we suck at the economy, and so we avoid talking about it, though at the end of the day, almost every election is about the economy. So we can't win unless we have a story on the economy. But even when we talk about the economy, we tend to focus on redistribution of wealth rather than creation of wealth. And that frustrates me because I think there's a really, really compelling story to be told about how progressive governments are better at creating wealth. I mean, so like Peter Naheed is an example, right? So, and I'm a union guy, but I'm a private sector union guy, and we've always understood that in order for our members to get better wages and better benefits and better job security, the companies that they work for have to do well, right? And I take that sort of what I wanted to do is take that sort of attitude about progressive wealth creation into the political sphere, using examples like Peter Naheed's government-led industrial policy, that created the oil sands and the petrochemicals south of the border. Biden is doing the same thing with his Inflation Reduction Act. He's embracing this idea of government-led industrial policy to bring manufacturing jobs back to the States. For me, it's not a question of if we should be talking about that. It's why haven't we done it already?
Yeah.
And I think
you're smart enough to know you're not going to use the words trickle down, though.
No, I won't because
I'm trolling you. I'm trolling you.
Yeah, but actually, like the Conservatives, whether it's the UCP here in Alberta or the CPC at the federal level or Conservatives in other jurisdictions, what they're offering is trickle down economics, which is a package that's based on this idea that you grow the economy and create jobs by cutting taxes, deregulating, getting rid of unions, privatizing the crap out of everything. We've had 50 years of that kind of trickle-down policy at all levels across the world, and it's been a failure. They promised economic growth, they promised job creation, they promised higher wages, and we've gotten to actually the exact opposite. But there was a progressive alternative in the years after the Second World War, up until about the 70s, and it was government-led industrial policy, support for universities and colleges and infrastructure. That's the way you grow prosperity, right? So the private sector has a role, but so does the government by paying for things like infrastructure, paying for things like training and innovation and research. This is the foundation, but those are exactly the things that the UCP is cutting, and that's why, I think that the New Democrats are missing an opportunity here. To be the party not just of healthcare and education and human rights, but we can also be the party of a progressive economy that actually works, and the party with a plan to pivot towards the future.
You're still in campaign mode. Like
I know, yeah, I'm sorry.
We'll remind people tuning in that Gil did pull out of the leadership race, although it sure doesn't sound like it. As we thank you for your time, Elias is here in the live. There's a lot of action in the live chat here, and a lot of people commending you for throwing your hat in the ring. Other people, critical of where the NDP's going right now. Obviously, there's sort of the conservative voices in here as well, and we'll get to some of those comments after we thank you for your time. But Elias is wondering who you're throwing your support behind. Have you made a decision? Will you be endorsing another candidate?
I will not be endorsing another candidate.
How come?
Well, I didn't throw my hat into the ring because I was satisfied with the options. I still have reservations about the other candidates, and don't get me wrong. I've gotten to know a lot of them quite well on the campaign trail, as you can imagine. We spent a lot of time together. I like all of them. They all have strengths.
Yeah. Everybody's friends.
Yeah.
Kumbaya.
But I'll be blunt with you, Ryan. The only reason I pulled out of this race is because I didn't have enough money to continue. It's not because I was inspired by one or the other of the candidates. So, and I still have reservations. And I'll tell you what, and I guess this is a challenge to the other candidates in the race. If they embrace the two big points that I brought to this race, then I will consider throwing my support behind them. And the first one is that they have to acknowledge that the missing piece in the coalition that we need to build in order to defeat the UCP are working people. And it's not just like I've heard all of them say, well, we need to grow the party. Of course we need to grow the party. But if you want to be successful in politics, you have to have a strategy, and a big part of the strategy is knowing your targets. I want to hear one of them say that, yes, it's working people. We've lost working people. So that's a necessary precondition for my support. And the second precondition for my support going forward is that they embrace my economic message, that we have to become the party of progressive economics, the party of industrial policy, the party with a plan to pivot our economy towards new opportunities in the future. And that means that they have to acknowledge that there's an energy transition going on, and that they have to actually have a policy for dealing with it. I haven't heard either of those things explicitly from any of the candidates, and until I do, none of them are going to get my support.
You know what the headline is from this interview, Gil? It's that the most prominent Labour leader in the province says there are no good options in the NDP leadership race. That's the headline from this conversation with us here today.
They could become a good option,
but they're not there yet.
Yes,
so
they're not there yet.
Hey,
that's right.
I've said this on the show many times. I don't have to agree with somebody politically or otherwise to commend their involvement in politics, their engagement with the public. I applaud you for throwing your hat into the ring, knowing, and I don't know if you appreciated this when I said it last time, but knowing that it was an uphill climb.
Yes, yeah.
But you did it nonetheless, and you went out and you raised that $50,000 or whatever it is, and I applaud you for that. We need more people engaged in democracy. Democracy and the people are better off when more people are interested and compelled to take action in politics and in community service. And so for that, I thank you, and I thank you for your availability here on the show as well, Gil.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Thanks,
All right, man.
Ryan. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, take
That's
care.
Gil McGowan. He's the. Oh, by the way, you won't. I'm assuming I already know the answer to this. There's no way in hell you're running as an MLA if you can't get behind any of the leadership candidates. Correct? Like your race is done.
I'll be honest, I haven't ruled it out. I would love to be part of a progressive New Democrat government here in Alberta.
They got to meet your conditions and yada yada.
Yeah.
But chances are that's a no.
I haven't decided yet.
Oh, he hasn't decided, Johnny. Okay, awesome, Gil. Thanks very much.
Okay.
That's Gil McGowan. He's the president of the Alberta Federation of Labor. In the live chat, let's get some of your comments. Amber Bracken's coming up in just a few minutes. Jill here says trades voting for the UCP is all about money. Says there's so much money being put into lobbying for old school oil and gas corporate subsidization. That from Gilles. Interesting comment here from Chad, who says, I've always struggled. Here it is, Gil. This one here says, I've always struggled to see myself in alignment with the New Democrats. I believe in a strong economy and that you can't tax your way to prosperity. We got a ton of comments here. I appreciate that, Real Talkers. If there's something, you're thinking about this, you're chewing on it, and then you want to hammer it out in an email, talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can catch us. Maybe you got something for the flamethrower coming up on Friday, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. The flamethrower, your chance to fire up this audience. And of course, this is one of our most downloaded features every single month. Your chance to blow off a little steam, say what needs to be said about whatever. It could be traffic circles. It could be wildfire smoke. It could be the state of politics, present day, whatever it is, talk@ryanjesperson.com. These conversations happen with the support of Real Talk partners like our friends at CWB Renewable Energy. And right now they're hiring. They want you to know for their locations in Lethbridge, Kamloops, Calgary, and Edmonton. CWB is hiring installers, solar system designers. They're hiring sales personnel, office managers, HR professionals, you name it. CWB is staffing up. You can learn more by checking out the careers link on their website at qbenergy.ca. Loved that praise for California closets. Did you hear that email that we received from Beverly just the other day? This was absolutely amazing. Beverly, they're in the midst of a renovation process. She says, Ryan, I heard you talking about California closets, but Beverly figured that they would be way too expensive, right? She said, but it's always good to get multiple quotes. She says, so we had heard you talking about that free consultation. We reached out. She said, boy, was I impressed. Here's the best part. Beverly met with Reese. Reese is who we worked with to design our closets. This is almost 10 years ago. She says, watching the 3D visualizations on the computer was totally amazing. And then the quote came in. She says, under our budget, under budget. And so she's hired California Closets. Said I wouldn't have even considered them if I hadn't heard about them on Real Talk. Beverly, thank you so much. Thanks for letting us know about your experience. Be like Beverly. Go check out californiaclosets.ca. That's where you can get your free consultation. Talking about work in Canada's oil sands, in particular in Alberta, Pathways Alliance is working to reduce emissions, to preserve existing jobs, and to create new ones. This is all part of Alberta and Canada answering the demands of the new global energy market. They want responsibly produced energy around the world, and Alberta can provide exactly that. Pathways Alliance is working on a carbon capture and storage network, the 6 biggest companies in the oil sands working with provincial and federal governments to make it happen. You can learn more by visiting pathwaysalliance.ca. What do you think about the Gil interview? You can tell he's not done. There's still fight left in that guy. Just not enough moolah in the bank account, which has got to be a bit of a bummer.
I don't think anyone drops out and then is happy. They still have that thirst. They still have that desire.
Yeah.
And I like how he left a little on the table. Maybe he'll
everybody
wants to be part of the team, especially when it's a winning team. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, have to see what happens. We like those kind of follow-up interviews. You'll remember when Raki Pancholi withdrew from the race as well. Basically, as soon as Naheed Nenshi declared, we had her back on the show to explain why and kind of give us her inside take on how that race had gone through her perspective. And I think there's always interesting insights from people that are on their way out. You might say they've got nothing to lose. They can speak a little bit more freely. Interesting to hear Gil say that he kind of feels, and he gave us the short answer, yes, kind of feels like the Alberta NDP is being taken over by the federal Liberals. If you agree or disagree, let us know. It was World Press Freedom Day just a short time ago, and a good friend of this show, Amber Bracken, an award-winning photojournalist, put out a thread on Twitter that caught our attention. We wanted to dig into that. Plus, Amber's got an awesome new feature in the newest episode. Why do I keep saying episode? It's like I can't get off the podcast train.
It's like an episode.
The
I
newest
love when it
issue.
comes out.
Yeah, the newest issue. You can find it online at albertaviews.ca, or we love getting ours in print. This is always on the coffee table in the Real Talk Green Room, the May issue of Alberta Views magazine. But Amber joining us in studio. It's so nice to have you here.
Thanks. Good to be here.
I got carried away with Gil and we left you sitting in there. How many coffees did you have? You had like 6 coffees?
I'm not flying away yet. We're good.
Yeah. Have you been paying attention to that Alberta NDP leadership race at all? Is that something that caught your attention?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to keep your finger on the pulse, pay attention.
Yeah.
But I think it's early days yet.
Yeah. There's still some things to be defined. Interesting to hear the Naheed Nenshi camp. I don't think that they've gone on the record saying this, but claiming that they've sold 50 of the 85,000 memberships, which would obviously indicate that there's a landslide coming. But who knows? Remains to be seen. It was on May 3rd, World Press Freedom Day, and we didn't have a chance to connect on that day. But you put out a thread on Twitter that caught our attention. I reached out to you right away, and I was like, "Come join us on the show. We got to talk about this." You basically said to my journo friends on World Press Freedom Day, especially the ones like me working from relative safety in Canada, you said, "I'm angry at the state of journalism. I'm angry at the forces standing against us, but I'm also angry at our lack of collective fight." I won't read the thread on from there, but what prompted you to not just be feeling this way, but to put it out there for public consumption?
I think if you're paying attention to journalism internationally, I mean, it's impossible not to know the risks that people face to do their job, in places like Myanmar, in Venezuela, in Mexico. And in Canada, I think sometimes we take it for granted. And I don't want to say that I don't see my colleagues working hard or standing up to infringements on press freedoms, but I think we could be doing more. And I think that we have grown complacent in a relatively free society. The 2021 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Maria Ressa, she's a Filipino journalist. She talks about the need to define your values early. And draw those lines in the sand early. So know the values that you're fighting for and draw those lines early. And I think that that's the situation that we're in Canada. Is I think that relative to other places in the world, excuse me, we think that we're doing okay, but there are important warning signs. And I think now is the time to insist on press freedom, because press freedom is a civil right. This is the foundation of a free society, is the ability to speak openly, to ask governments questions, to look inside what's happening, in the halls of power. And I think that you can't sleep on it,
What are some of the warning signs that you're seeing, like in our own backyard?
I mean, we have an absolutely abhorrent Freedom of Information Act system. There's like a whole series in the Globe and Mail right now about, the closed society that we have in Canada.
Are you talking about Robin Doolittle's work?
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, it's incredible work. And they're doing a lot of heavy lifting. She's got a team as well, to try to make regular people care about the plight of getting information out. And it's an uphill battle to make people pay attention to sort of the sausage making, I guess, of journalism. It's sort of famously uncommon or unpopular to talk about it in newsrooms. Like, I think that we the business of reporting, but this is really important stuff. And what they're saying, what this FOI stuff cues, is that we're living in a more and more closed society, and anecdotally, I get this reflected back to me all the time when I work with international reporters, which I do all the time. So I'm working with, reporters from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. And I hear that working here is harder than working in America, that our values and our access to information is different and difficult. And we're seeing the arrest of journalists, the detainment of journalists. We're seeing...
You've been arrested.
I've been arrested, yeah.
Yeah, you were in Wet'suwet'en territory, correct?
Yeah.
That was what, a couple years ago?
2021, yeah.
Can you talk about that? That's still... There's still legal action happening there, I would imagine.
We have an open lawsuit against the...
RCMP?
RCMP.
Okay.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about where that's at right now?
It's in boring legal... It's it's unfolding.
What was
There's
that
not a lot I
experience
can
like?
say.
Can you remind us? You were there with Brandy Morin, weren't you?
No. I was reporting for the Narwhal.
Okay.
And Matt Simmons was the writer who was working from outside camp. So I was actually in camp when police were enforcing. And
what were you arrested for? Trespassing, failing to observe something? What was the...
honestly, don't quote me. I think the charge was contempt of court.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like violating the injunction, basically.
So, but what was that experience? How did that experience, and you've written about it, by the way, people can check out the narwhal.ca, just Google Amber Bracken arrested if you want the direct link to it. But how did that influence your perspective and maybe what you're talking about here today? Did you feel the same 6 hours before you were arrested as you do right now? Or did that sort of deepen your conviction?
No, experiencing something firsthand will always underline the truth of it, but before that, I was already experiencing limitations to press freedom, both on that story in Wet'suwet'en, but other places too, where, so during the pandemic, it was just about impossible to access health, like hospitals, and see what was actually happening with in COVID treatment wards. Like, you'll notice the absolute lack of first-person reporting from Alberta and Western Canada and really Canada at large. There's very few examples of reporters actually getting inside of hospitals and COVID wards. So that was one thing that I really struggled against. Covering fire and disaster things, you'll have sort of the velvet gloves of 100-kilometer exclusion, like 100 kilometers distance from the things that you're trying to report on. And this is the kind of thing that's become normalized in Canada for a really long time. And I think the more that we accept it, the more that we take it as sort of business as usual, the more that we really teach power holders that that's also normal,
You write or you tweet, I hear lazy generalizations about the mainstream media from all corners. Rich people say, trust me instead. I see middle class and low income people canceling subscriptions and gloating when an outlet fails. I see they have forgotten we ask questions for them. There is, I can feel it, a palpable animosity growing toward journalists and populations, prominent politicians, rather. Donald Trump is the classic example. Pierre Poilievre is following that same playbook, attempting or working to turn the public on the media, obviously to serve their own purposes, Trump in particular, but in those other circumstances it applies as well. And that is a thing. Like, there will be people that will comment on this YouTube episode, I guarantee it. Oh, two people bitching, two elites, two people on the Trudeau dime bitching about their own, whatever, self-absorbed, narcissistic, that sort of idea, right? That is a real thing, and it certainly factors into this. Yeah,
and I think we have to look at who benefits from that narrative, who cashes in on the narrative of those elite journalists who don't actually care about you. And listen, I grew up in Red Deer in a working class neighborhood. Before I was a reporter, I was a waitress. I'm not from the ivory tower, and I know lots of people like me. It's not an us and them. The society that I want to live in is one where you can ask questions and you can have robust dialogue. And I also think that there's, in the tweet that you read out there, one of the things that I'm getting at is also this idea that people are angry about civil rights and about press violations when it's their partisan team. So, I see people gloating from one side of the fence or the other about difficulties in different outlets based on how they perceive them to be aligned. So, I see kind of like lefties celebrating National Post issues with the National Post and celebrating layoffs there. And on the other side, I see people celebrating layoffs at CTV and CBC. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in all cases, we're getting less people asking questions of power, less people trying to tell you what's going on. And it's not about only getting information that you like or that you totally agree with, but the more people asking questions is really better for all of us. So, I think we have to get the partisanship out of the idea of what a public discourse is about and what it means to have an open society.
Yeah, I've always just kind of felt like when I see people gloating, like number one, gloating when anybody loses their job is kind of a lousy move. I understand that it's sort of like team sports, camps, whatever you want to call it now, and I don't know, people just sort of like cheer for others' demise. But at the end of the day, it's like fewer journalists, fewer outlets, fewer reporters, fewer eyes on a story, less accountability. It never, under any circumstance, does it ever serve the public better to lose journalists, to lose journalism outlets. And again, critics will say, well, look at the self-importance on this guy is off the charts, but that's not it. Mm-mm. It's that from the school trustee level to the city councils, to the provincial governments, to the federal governments, to international agencies and organizations that need to be covered and talked about, let alone natural disasters and tragedies and scandal and corruption. I mean, who do people think is digging this all up? Who do people think is putting in the hundreds of hours sometimes to put out these big stories, to fund the long-form journalism? Yeah. You've been critical of the big outlets. You say, I see the most powerful outlets only tepidly defend journalism rights of access of information, of copyright. Lawyers say stand down. Bosses say sit tight. Reporters give in, fall back, stay quiet. I love your writing, by the way, Amber. Politicians, police, content vultures all learn a new normal. Is that because big funds own all the big papers? I mean,
it's not that. I think it's the inevitable. And listen, this is my opinion. I don't have any particular insight into.
It's all opinion.
Into CBC. What I see is the inevitable tendency towards conservative choices with bureaucracy. So you're a big organization, you have a lot of things to consider. The lawyers get involved. You know, it's always easier to say no. It's always easier not to take a risk. It's always easier not to stick your neck out. And I mean, they don't particularly want to be spending all their time in court or, you know, fighting with the organizations. And there's something to be said for building good relationships with sources. But there's also a line that we have to draw and to say that this is not acceptable. It's not okay for you to ignore our requests indefinitely. It's not okay for you to hold our reporters, 40 or 50 kilometers away from the news of the day that Canadians want to know about. It's really not okay for you to deny all access to public institutions and, publicly funded scientists and like all of these things that we pay for, and we don't really know what's going on with them, or we don't have free access to them as Canadians. Like, the charter rights are not for journalists, they're for Canadians. It's really for all Canadians equally. And we just happen to be the ones, I don't know, dumb enough or crazy enough or something to waste our time and go broke trying to do this work. It's hard.
I feel like it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, I think so. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try or that we shouldn't push back.
Sure.
And yeah, like we have American outlets breaking big stories in Canada because it's almost impossible for Canadians to get access to that. Recently, there was the big story, I don't know if you caught it, about TD banking being involved in hundreds of millions of dollars of laundering the proceeds of fentanyl. And it was broken by the Wall Street Journal. This is the second largest bank in Canada, and the Wall Street Journal broke it out of the U.S.
No bueno.
Not great. It doesn't look great on us, And I think that this is the writing on the wall, that we don't have the free society that we think we have. We aren't getting the access to information that we should be. And in this case, we get the information because it's of interest to Americans. But what about all of the things in Canada that are specific to Canadian interest? Who's doing the deep digging? How are we going to get the information for the things that are of explicit interest to Canadians only?
We're talking to Amber Bracken, photojournalist. And when I say award-winning photojournalist, a lot of people say that. They talk about award-winning this, award-winning that, award-winning podcasts. We're talking recipient of the World Press Photo of the Year. Majority of the audience will hear this on the podcast, so they won't see this image, which is absolutely striking, obviously very powerful. Could you talk to us about this image, the one that earned you such an incredible accolade?
Well, it's a photo from the Kamloops Residential School memorial. So it was an installation put up by a local Secwepemc artist to honor the children and to represent them. So they put up all of these crosses and tiny red clothes alongside the highway leading up to the Kamloops Residential School during the, excavation and mourning of the 200 graves that were discovered there. And the photograph is of it at sunset, and there's a rainbow, and you see sort of the leading lines of the tiny clothes, being an embodied, disembodied presence of children who died there.
Did you know when you captured that image that you had captured something, I hesitate to use the word special, but something so powerful?
I mean, I think that this photo... I knew it was powerful. Yeah, I did. But special is a hard thing with photos because, what resonates with people. I think I've humbly, not so humbly, I think I've made lots of powerful images, but what resonates with the public is not always... You can't always predict it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair comment. Stick around. I want to talk to you about this Alberta Views feature because I absolutely love it. It's cool because it's a photo essay, but you've also written the text. So it's like a feature. I don't know if is that you stepping outside your comfort zone writing, or do you love writing?
I like writing. It's really painful. So I don't do that often,
but
I do like writing.
You did a beautiful job, and I love this. This is a young girl. I think isn't she 10 years old? And she committed to run the length of the Gaza Strip as a fundraiser. It's a really neat feature, and we'll get into that with Amber in just a quick second. Wanted to let you know that this conversation is happening with the support of Real Talk partners like Friesen Brothers, and I was stopped on the street yesterday by a Real Talker by the name of Will, who just wanted to let me know that he has so much enjoyed the new Friesen Brothers location, Friesen Brothers Glenora, that's in West Edmonton, the local reference. And I always like to ask Johnny, the people that come up to us and specifically talk about Friesen Brothers, I say, what is it that you're loving at Friesen Brothers? And
sourdough.
He sat on it for a second. He said the sourdough potato buns.
Ooh.
He said, I think that Real Talkers would really love the sourdough potato buns. And I said, well, what do you use them for? Are you making sandwich? He said, yeah. He said, sometimes I'll make little sandwiches. He said, they're great for dipping into soup. And so he hits the Friesen Brothers before he's off to work every day, hits that hot and ready kitchen.
They've got him covered.
They're doing everything.
Doing everything with sourdough. I can't wait till they make, toques and stuff out of it. I'll wear the sourdough
whatever
in the winter.
can work the sourdough into. Johnny's into it, and probably Will too. So Will's recommendation, Real Talker Will, is the sourdough potato buns at Friesen Brothers. 17 locations across the province. Friesen Brothers is Alberta grown and Alberta owned. As we head into, unfortunately, wildfire season, as we'll potentially see some spring flooding, depending on where you are. If you're anywhere in central, northern Alberta, if disaster strikes, heaven forbid, keep Complete Care Restoration in mind. They've got more than 25 years of experience restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. Professional property restoration with trained and certified personnel, including things like black mold, asbestos, stuff you don't want to mess around with yourself. They'll respond 24/7 around the clock. You can find them online at completecarerestoration.ca. You can check out Amber Bracken's most recent work, or some of her most recent work, at albertaviews.ca. That's where you can read online content from their May issue, which is just out, and subscribers of Alberta Views will know that it's arrived at your door like it did ours just a short time ago. Take us into this wonderful story of this 10-year-old girl that basically went above and beyond to raise awareness, to raise funds for displaced Palestinians. This is a powerful story. Is it Zaher Asaf? Is that how you pronounce her name? Zaher Asaf?
Yeah. I don't have the Lebanese pronunciation either, but that's pretty close.
How did she get on your radar?
I bumped into her on another assignment, actually. She was helping to hand out favors at a different press conference, which was, and she stuck out right away because all the other kids were just kids, and she was wearing the flag and she had the stickers on her face. And this was really, really quickly after everything had happened with the Hamas attack, and then we were seeing the bombing and, everything that was going on back in October. And so, yeah, she caught my eye. I talked to her mom a bit and then found out that she was doing this fundraiser to raise money. And then in the end, of course, she ended up raising $25,000.
It's amazing.
For a 10-year-old. I mean, it is pretty incredible. And was just really dedicated and I think clear in her moral compass to try to help people. You know, she saw war, she saw suffering, and the response was so pure. And I think that's what really attracted me to talking to Zaher and her family, is that they were just clear. Well, there was a lot of arguing and continues to be, you know, shouting about one thing or the other. The fact remains that human beings are suffering, and that seems to be a central point, that we should be able to agree on alleviating that suffering. You know? Yeah,
I think, you know, people are taking a look at that conflict, at that war, and it's just so difficult to wrap your mind around what's happening. And to me, the story that you tell here through your images and through your text, people can check it out at albertaviews.ca. The fact that it's a child just to me reiterates one of the great tragedies of this entire conflict, and that is the number of innocent people that have been killed, maimed, displaced. It's a child raising funds and awareness on behalf of children. And while nothing I'm saying is profound, the way that you tell the story is really, really powerful. Do you approach your storytelling differently when it's a younger subject?
I think you have to be careful. I mean, you know this, like that you have to be careful with anyone who has extra vulnerabilities. And of course, children are more vulnerable in many ways. So I was careful in some of the questions that I would ask her, and just thoughtful about what was appropriate for a 10-year-old to talk about. And everything was done with, you know, with her mom around, or like in close consent kind of area. So this was like not a joke. The actual run that she did, the length of the Gaza Strip, she trained. I mean, you sort of document her training. This is a pretty remarkable feat for a young person that seemed to be overcoming adversity, fighting through pain. It sounds like she's training for, you know, it sounds like she's an adult training for a big race. A young girl, sort of wise beyond her years. I mean, it was a physical accomplishment. She suffered, like she struggled to do this. She ran the 40 kilometers and 5K stretches. But before she did this, she'd only ever run 1 kilometer at a time. So she trained to be able to run 5 kilometers. And then she ran 5 kilometers 8 days, 8 days in a row to do the 40 kilometers. So, you know, day after day after day, her little 10-year-old legs getting more and more tired. And she wasn't going to quit. She didn't give up. And I think that's, it's sweet. It's inspirational. I don't know. Yeah, it is. And it's also like, I just sort of look at it, and a lot of people, and we attempt to answer, I should say, this question on the show all the time. And that's people saying like, what can I do? Right? This is halfway around the world, or this is a world away, or this is totally, you know, what can I do? And this is somebody, let alone a young person, a child, 10-year-old, doing something. Maybe as an outlet for their own feelings and processing what they're seeing and seeking to understand this. You write masterfully about other young children, young people interacting with her, posting comments on Facebook, managing or wrestling with their own grief or their understanding of that tragedy, their understanding of that war. But also kind of like her journey too, and it's just I don't know. It's something that I think can apply to me as like a 47-year-old. It's not limited on age or geography to try to relate to somebody that's trying to process what they're seeing and do something to find some sort of an outlet for the conviction or the dismay or the empathy or whatever it is that they're feeling. Well, one of the troubles with social media is that it gives us the impression that we have done something, because you go on social media and Slacktivism. You say something, oh, good job. I've declared something of the world, and now the world shall change. And it doesn't work like that. And I think Zaher gives us a really good example of feeling some kind of way about something and finding an action, of a tangible thing to do to try to make the world slightly better. And I mean, listen, I know that this is such a challenging topic. You know, you're talking about the Hamas-Israel war. Like, this is not a small issue. It's big. But I think that we could always refocus our efforts on alleviating suffering. You know, there's always a moral right to helping children. I can't see where the bad in that could ever possibly be. So yeah, that's what brought me to her. And yeah, she's pretty cool. Yeah.
Very well said, and a story beautifully told. Again, people can find it online. You just go to the Alberta Views website. That's albertaviews.ca. You can read Amber's work. You can check out their cover story as well. Our Lobbyist Premier, written by Tadzio Richards. They've got an interesting Meet the Minister feature with Brian Jean, Minister of Energy, and more. We encourage you to support independent journalism, to support work like Amber's, and to subscribe to Alberta Views. And there's an amazing initiative here. The pitch is very simple and very quick, and that is that if you want to knock 50% off a 1-year subscription to Alberta Views, just use the promo code AVRJ. Think of Alberta Views, Ryan Jesperson, AVRJ at albertaviews.ca. That means you're going to get 10 issues through the year delivered to your door for $20. Come on, $20. AVRJ, the promo code at albertaviews.ca. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. You're doing incredible work. People, if they want to learn more and see more of what you've done, they can check out amberbracken.com. We'll put that in the show notes so people can check it out. But really, really incredible photography. You have an amazing talent, Amber. The pride of Red Deer, Alberta. I love it. Keep up the amazing work.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for hanging out with us. You're always a welcome guest here in this studio.
Well,
yeah.
I will just also want to say, going back to the whole thing about press freedom and the space to talk about things. I mean, I could ask you, why'd you call yourself Real Talk? But you've got space for people from all sides of the spectrum, and I think that that's unfortunately becoming more and more rare. But it's an important space, and I really do hope that people will continue to try to listen to people they don't exactly agree with.
Well, thanks for saying that. Yeah. Let me freewheel something here. I got a text from a buddy yesterday that kind of like, I don't know, it took me aback. So I was talking to Charles Adler yesterday about what happened at the University of Alberta over the weekend. We see at the University of Calgary and other demonstrations, encampments broken up. This is sort of a pro-Palestine, if you want to call it that, demonstration. I think everybody saw it. Check out our issue or episode. Now I'm calling ours issues and Alberta Views episodes. Anyway, I'm all twisted up. But I was talking to Adler about it, and my take on it, I didn't think I waded in too much. I mean, my take on it was like pretty basic. I just basically said, like, the gist of it paraphrased is, I don't know if cops needed to use batons. I thought it was a tough look to have one cop in particular absolutely lost his marbles and just started swinging his baton at people that were like sitting on lawn chairs. I acknowledged I hadn't seen video before. I don't know if that person said something snarky to him. I don't know how many warnings they'd had to vacate. I don't know. But I acknowledge that it's a tough look, which it is. I don't care what you think. It is a tough look for police to be swinging batons at a university campus. Number two, I said I understand that universities don't want encampments, and they're probably going to be compelled to do something about it. So I acknowledge that. And number three, universities need to be a safe space for freedom of thought and freedom of expression. Those are my three pillars of my take. I didn't think it was that outrageous. So I get a message from a guy that I've known for 25 years. Says, or you damn well should, that it was illegal for them to be there, and they were not only warned but encouraged to leave before the threat of arrest, yet you don't report that part. A huge lack of integrity on both of you individuals. He's talking about me and Adler. Sure. Unless you just didn't include that part in your clickbait post. You and Adler continually go full nut bar and manipulative with your messaging beyond simple left-wing lunacy. You're both so disappointingly beyond the pale on a vast many fronts, you're unlistenable. You two are as large part of the problem as these fools who need a baton to wise up. Can't fucking possibly believe that, but I digress. Funny how both of your tunes change depending on what side of the political spectrum people are standing on. Hypocrites personified. Not funny at all. Telling, predictable, without an ounce of honor in your craft. Not surprised. Be better if that's even now within the realm of possibility for you both. Like, this is a guy I've known for 25 years, right? Yeah. And I just but to me, it's like, I'm not sorry that precious little pumpkin got his feelings hurt by people suggesting that it's a tough look for cops to swing batons at people on the university campus.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about, where we act as though we're dilettante about civil liberties, and people will either cheer the baton wielding police depending on the political spectrum. I saw people celebrating when the convoy protests broke up, and you had the sort of jackbooted police. I didn't cheer that at all. I wasn't happy to see that. That is an infringement of civil liberties. And I didn't particularly love to see them go on and disrupt our capital for as long as they did. However, you can't ignore the fact that you're having militarized police against civilians. And I don't care whether it's Palestinian protesters or whether it's a convoy protester. That is a bad look in a free society. That is not something that we should be celebrating. And it doesn't have to be partisan. It shouldn't be partisan. It's about the right of, peaceable assembly. It's about the right to express yourself in a free society. And these are fundamental values, and they shouldn't be dependent on, the political touchstone of the moment, I'm always going to be against civilians getting hit in the face with batons. I don't think that should be a radical thing to think,
We always appreciate when people leave comments on our YouTube episodes, and I try to respond to as many comments as I can. And we had one. So, on our episode here, this is the May 13th episode. If you're looking for it, this is me and Adler talking about this demonstration broken up at the University of Alberta. There have been others broken up as well. And there was another comment, Amber, that touches on what you're getting to. And I thought it made sense to reference here as well. Interested Meow, nice handle, says, oh, now these two are commenting, me and Adler, commenting on police brutality at protests when it's a cause you agree with. Number one, Charles Adler agrees with the pro-Palestinian. Really? For real? Like Charles Adler, who's been back in Israel this whole time, not without empathy, but give your fucking head a shake. Sorry, I'm a little worked up, Amber, but give your head a shake. When it's a cause you agree with, you'll say anything to justify it. When you disagree, at best it'll be crickets, pretending it's not happening. We don't forget the trucker protest, said Interested Meow. Number one, the trucker protest carried on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Number two, I didn't see police using batons on any truckers or any demonstrators, not even the ones in the hot tubs. And number three, I sure as hell would never cheer for police using batons in any circumstance. And I actually replied to Interested Meow, and I said, if you find me on the record anywhere calling for physical or violent assault from police onto demonstrators in Ottawa or anywhere else related to that convoy, I'll e-transfer you $1,000 right now, because it just does not exist. And it turns into this thing where now we're picking and choosing based on our ideological purity test who is okay to be hit with batons. Are we really dumbing down our discourse to this point?
No, but I mean, there's people that do, you could take a temperature test when those protests were being cleared in Ottawa. Take a scroll through Twitter and see who's, screaming about the civil liberties and who's quiet, and vice versa, to whatever left-wing issue of the day happens to be. I think that what's become convenient is leaning into the rule of law when you disagree with an issue or a particular voice. And we just forget that that's a double-edged sword. The same laws that were written basically for the pro-Wet'suwet'en protesters and the shutdown Canada protests here in Canada, making it illegal to block public infrastructure and highways, could just as easily be weaponized against a right-wing cause. In fact, there's questions raised about why it wasn't. I think that would be face a court challenge if they tried. But I mean, we do have the Axe the Tax protesters out on highway roadsides, and we're temporarily blocking highways and things like that. And we didn't see that legislation used against the people in Coots. But I'm just saying civil liberties are for everybody, and I don't think that we should pick and choose. And it's really sad to me that we are at a place where it's become so partisan. That you get screamed at for saying maybe somebody shouldn't have been hit with batons. That's shouldn't be controversial in a free society.
Right. It's that Voltaire quote, I disagree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Yeah. Right. I mean, it still holds true. You and I could talk for 6 hours, but we better wrap. Hey, before we do, stick around for this, because I promise that I love this, and Johnny and I get this from time to time. I'm sure you do as well, but someone just runs up and approaches us, and Johnny, I was lucky enough, I was honored to host the Edmonton Chamber's Mayor's State of the City address just the other day, about 1,100 people in the room, hearing from Mayor Amarjeet Sohi and what he had to say. Not even the point. I'm just giving you some context. I'm walking out. This gal runs up to me. She says, I love Real Talk. And she says, and like Wayne Gretzky says, and so then she knew how to get my attention by quoting the great one. She says, like Gretzky says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And she said, so I was hoping that you could maybe help us out with something. And I said, what is it? And she said, I'm with BGCbigs. And so I immediately thought, yeah, we want to do this because these are mentorship programs. These are resources for youth and families, in particular single parent families and kids who could use more mentors in their life. And in particular, BGCbigs is on a quest to recruit 100 men in 100 days. They're looking to recruit 100 male mentors. And here's the deal. When Danielle reached out to me, she's a friend of the show. She said, we've got until May 15th. And I said, well, we better act quick because if you're listening to the show on the day that we're doing it, May 14th, we got 24 hours. We got one day, and they're at about 88 men right now. So they're looking for 12 more. You can be one of the 100. You can become a mentor. There's no need for you to change the future, just the moment. It's that easy. If you've been looking for a way to apply your empathy, your sense of community, your desire to maybe give back, maybe there was somebody that volunteered as a mentor in your life. Maybe we're talking directly to you. You're walking your dog or you're riding the bus or whatever it is right now. You're listening to this show and you're like, I think Jespo's talking to me directly. This is your sign. Okay, so we're going to put this link in the show notes. It's bgcbigs.ca, bgcbigs.ca. They're looking to recruit 100 male mentors, 100 men in 100 days, and we would love to push them past their goal. On behalf of Real Talk and Relay and everybody involved with this, I want to thank you in advance for your consideration. And thanks to you, Amber, for hanging out with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. It was great. Coming
up on tomorrow's episode, I haven't even told Johnny, this is so cool. We're going to have in-house the people that were behind the design, the implementation, and the rollout of the Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion. I'm so excited about this. It was our positive reflection on Monday's show presented by Kubi Energy. And of course, one of the people that made it happen, a big friend of the show, they were listening to it. They said, do you want to learn more about it? We said, heck yeah. And so that's exactly where we'll go. We hope you'll join us then. Take care.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford,